we're talking about document control and how that feeds into the Plans app, as well as um, how this really works with issuing, what we use document control for, and how we see things on Info Exchange. So when we're out of the office, and even though we're not going to spend real time on the Plans app, it gives you the ability to really have those sheets at your fingertips when you're out in the field. So if you have an iPad, so right now it's iPad only. If you have an iPad, then you can access the latest and greatest sheets from Document Control, which we'll talk about how we add those in there. Um, but you would be able to not only access them, but you could also pin things to the sheets. So you could pin things like action items, punch list, field notes, and you can even take a photo and mark up the photo and have that attached to that particular item. And even add in, if it's an action item, if project to do, if I assign it to someone, give it a due date, put in some details. For punch list, I can put in things like spatial index. So, exactly what room or area that it happens to be in. And in both cases, I can add photos, multiple photos. I can mark up those photos, and it will also include a part of the sheet that I happen to be zoomed into on the iPad. So it would give reference from the sheet, but it would also be able to include photos. And once I am connected to Wi-Fi, then it can synchronize back to Newforma. So that's another great part about the Plans app is I can be in the office, I can open the app, be connected to Wi-Fi, download all the sheets that I need. Then when I'm out in the field, I can turn off Wi-Fi. I could be in a basement that has no internet connection, and I would still be able to do these functions of not only seeing the sheets, but pinning things to them. And then when I'm connected back to Wi-Fi, I can upload those to Newforma. But in preparation for that, we have to have something in document control. So we use document control not only to populate the Plans app, but also to track sets of files that you intend to issue. So if you do issuances at certain milestones on a project, you would have those sheets in document control, and you can add future revisions, because we all know that when we do revised drawings, we don't necessarily revise every single sheet. This way we can see all of the sheets, we can see which one is at which revision level, and when we issue, we can choose which sheets we issue and which revision of those sheets that we issue. But even if you are not going to issue sheets through document control, just having the sheets in document control populates the Plans app. So you would be able to use that outside of the office. And they also automatically show on the Info Exchange website. So if you're out of the office using Info Exchange, you would see that as well. So here, though, we're talking about drawings and specifications for document control. We're going to go through how we add record documents, how we issue them, and how we would add revisions from files. So adding those new record documents. And then if you're going to see it when you're out of the office, whether it's on the Plans app or Info Exchange, you need to be on the project team with web access checked. So that's another thing that we need to be cognizant of, is we need to be on that team and have that web access available to us. As employees, you will always see the latest and greatest revision for a sheet on Info Exchange. External people only see the latest and greatest issued revision. They would still also need to be on the project team with web access. So I'm going to hop back to this PowerPoint once we get to talking about the app. So I'm going to hop over to a training environment. Hopefully I can find the proper sheets in here, so we'll give it a shot. So in the Document Control Activity Center, I'm going to start it blank, and I'll show you how to add sheets, and then I'll show you how to issue them. And you'll notice here I have the ability to also package sheets from Document Control, and that's so that you might have hundreds of sheets that relate to a project, and you might have some that are different disciplines or need to be distributed differently. You can reference those in kind of a subgrouping in a package so that when you're ready to issue, or if you just want to look at them that way, you could already have them in that subset. Now, when we add sheets to document control, just so you guys know, we're simply pointing to the sheet on the network. So we're not copying it and taking up more space by having another duplicate of that same sheet. We're actually just pointing to that sheet. So what that also means is that once you reference it in document control, you don't want to rename it or move it. You could update it as long as the name stays the same, but you would want to keep it in that same location. And what I see commonly is a lot of people will have separate subfolders for each revision, and it will only have the sheets in that folder that relate to that revision. And then that way they can kind of keep it organized in their folder structure, but then in document control, we just simply point to those revisions and have it update. So from here, once it's, it's totally empty here, nothing up my sleeves, we're going to add revisions from files. So normally most people think to add record document, but if I click into there, you'll see that it's really only to add one sheet at a time. And it's all of that metadata around that particular sheet. So if I want to track the scale, the owner, the discipline, the purpose, the size, the title, all those kind of things, really the only thing required is the number, and I would want to point to the file itself on the network. So I'd have to browse to that. But to add them in mass, that's when I do the add revisions from files, even if it is the first revision. So even if it's that base set of drawings, I would come in here, and I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger so you guys can see it a little bit easier. So I would say either add files or add folder. If the sheets happen to all be in the same folder, I could just say add folder. I'm going to say add files because I'm not quite sure where they are in this project. It looks like they copied over the same folder structure, so it should be okay. But if I was coming in and let's say these were my base set of drawings, I could highlight them all. I'm just going to use a Control A and say open. And this will add them all to the top part of this table, and they say unlinked. And the reason why is that as we go through and start adding additional revisions, it will try to auto link. So you would see all of the existing revisions down at the bottom. So if they happen to be the first revision, second revision, whichever, you would see all the sheets that exist in document control down here at the bottom. And when you say add files going forward to add revisions, if the name is the same as the sheets below, like they're in a different location, but they're named the same, it will auto link the new revision. But anything that is either new or the name can't link or it was named improperly or what have you, it would stay up here and it would stay unlinked until you either manually link it or it's a brand new sheet and you would just create it as a new sheet. But in this case, these are the first revision. So I'm going to highlight them all again, Control A, and I will come over to say create, to create them as that first revision. Now you'll notice down here at the bottom, it puts them at the bottom for record documents. It's going to say add new record document. The state is added. It's revision number 1. It's got today's date and then the location of those files. Now you can start the revision numbering at any number that you want, or it can even be alphabetical. So if you do your revisions A, B, C, D, E, then feel free to do that. I'll show you in the project settings where you can do that. Or you could start your revision at revision number 0 or 1 or 4, whatever is appropriate for your project. And I know that you're not going to be starting with every project from the beginning. So if you were going back and adding these, and the project is already in progress, then what you could do is you could highlight all of the sheets here. And let's say that the revision date of these are not today, it's 2 weeks ago. With them all highlighted, I can come down to the bottom and change that revision date and put it back to be 2 weeks ago so that I can update that. I could also change the revision number if I realize, oh, I wanted to start at 0. I could change those here. And I could even put in a revision prefix, suffix, or even a description for the revision. So I could call them base drawings or something like this, or initial drawings. And then even though that's now, the revision description with an individual sheet highlighted, notice I can also change the name or number here, and I could even put in a title for this particular sheet if I wanted to. But otherwise, if I'm ready to go, I can just say add down here at the bottom, and it will add the first revision into document control. So that base set of drawings. And what you'll see here that we haven't seen before is we have this little plus sign next to our sheets. And when I click that to expand it, it will show me how many revisions, the date of those revisions, what state they happen to be in. Right now they're in draft. We haven't issued anything. The revision description, and then if there were any related items, and the source file. So as we go through and add more revisions, we'll see this get populated. But what's nice about this is that as I add revisions, it's not like it adds each of these multiple times. I would just click the plus sign and then I would see all of the revisions underneath of it. The other thing that we see here is with a revision highlighted or with a sheet highlighted down at the bottom, we do get a preview of that sheet, which we can open with the viewer or with Adobe Acrobat, whichever the native application is for that particular sheet, because we can do things in here other than PDFs. PDFs are the only ones that populate the Plans app, but you could track revisions of other files if you wanted to in here. We can also see any kind of issue history. So if this sheet had been issued or any of its revisions had been issued through the issuance here in Document Control, you would see that here. So you could see like issue to such and such on whatever day via info exchange, etc. And then so I have any emails associated, related items, if I had made this related. And this will come into play a little bit down the road when we're talking about contract management. So if you have sheets in here that are going to be issued as part of a respond and close to a submittal, or a send and close to a submittal, or an RFI or change order or what have you, you can actually pull these in from document control into that step of the workflow and have it mark it as an issuance. It would also mark it as a related item to that contract management item. So just kind of thinking down the road, once we get to that point, we'll kind of circle back to this in document control. And then if there were any supporting documents or a change log. So here we can just see that Adam added the new revision, right? So he just added revision number 1. So I can see kind of a lot of data here. To add an additional revision, I would do that add revisions from files again. But first I'm going to show you that up here at the top, I happen to have a lot of columns in here that I'm not using, like scale and size and maybe even title I don't use. Within any table in Newforma, like we talked about before, I can right click on any column header and I can just uncheck columns that I'm not going to use. So maybe I'm not too concerned about scale and size and discipline and owner, and that's fine. We'll leave those out. But that way there would be less columns in here and I could make it a little bit more towards what I need to see. Plus I can drag and drop the columns in whatever order I would like. And this will only affect me and it will be across all projects. So if I do need to have it look a certain way that makes more sense to me, then that's fine. A lot of times people will put revision before revision state, but in actuality, you could do whatever you want. So here we've got our add revisions from files to add our next revision. So now you can see we have all of the revision number 1s are sitting down here, and it's just telling you that it's missing revision number 2 because we haven't linked anything to it yet. So anytime that you see it in red and it's unchecked, even if the add was available to me, even if I said add, it wouldn't change anything that is unchecked and in red because nothing has changed. So those would all stay at revision number 1. So in this case, we're going to say add files, and I'm going to browse to a different folder. And let's say I'm going to add all of these. I'm just going to say Control A and open. And anything that has a similar or has that same name will automatically link, because you can see now these are all green, they're checked. It's now added revision number 2 with today's date. And then it has still some in here that are missing because a revision was not done on those particular sheets. So I have some down here that are also missing. These are all my structural mechanical. Maybe I didn't update those. And I have 3 that are still sitting at the top. So these are ones that either did not exist before or the name was not similar enough to auto link it. So if it was, if it was too different, it's not going to find it down here at the bottom. And there are 2 ways that I can accomplish this. I could go back and modify the name, but if I knew for sure that A221 was really the revision for A208, then I can simply drag it and drop it on top and it will make it the new revision. So you can see here now A221 is really revision number 2 for sheet A208. And A208 is revision number 1. So that wouldn't normally be the case, but just showing you that you can drag and drop it on top and force it to be the new revision. And then these other 2, maybe they didn't exist before, which they didn't. So I could just highlight both of those and say create like we did before, and it will just place them down here at the bottom, and it will say add new record document, revision number 1. It starts them all out at the same number, and it has that path. Now it has that date as well. So what I usually do is if I have to change dates in mass and I don't want to have to go through and highlight these and skip all the ones that say missing, etc., is what I can do is I can pull in the new revision file status, and I'm just going to exclude everything that says missing. And then that way I can just do a Control A to highlight them all, and maybe the revision date for these was really last Tuesday. So I'll put it in at the 11th, and then I can say add. So now you'll see I have some that are on revision number 2, some that are on revision number 1. And again, if I click the plus sign, now I can see, and I didn't put in a revision description for the new revision, but I can see the first revision was from September 4th. The second revision was from September 11th. They are both in draft state. That does not go back and automatically issue the older revision. It still leaves it in draft. And from Info Exchange, from the project website, I would be able to see these as well. So I would be able to see these by default, even though they have not been issued. An external person, even if they have web access to a project, only sees document control documents that have been issued. So if these were to all stay in draft mode, let's say for J&E, you were never going to issue record documents. You just wanted to keep track of all of the revisions so that you could see them on the Plans app. An external person, even if they have web access to the project, they still would not see any record documents because they're not in an issued state. So if I were to log into Info Exchange.
So Lori, these documents are now registered as a document, but they are not issued.
They're not in an issued. They're not in an issued state. Correct. They're just in draft, and we're simply just pointing to those files on the folder structure.
Okay, and external users or a final user will see only documents that are issued.
Right, and they would only see the most recent issued revision. So for example, let's say that this sheet actually had 3 revisions, and the second revision was issued, but the third one is still in draft mode. As an external person, when they log in, if they have web access to Info Exchange for this project, they would see the second revision because it's the latest issued revision. As an internal person, if I was logging into Info Exchange, I would see the third revision because I always see the most recent revision, whether it's issued or not. Now, if none of the revisions had been issued, I would still see the latest issued or the latest revision, but the external person wouldn't see any revisions. If none of them are in an issued state, they won't see any of them. So let's see if I can get in here. Hopefully I can remember the password. Nope, of course not. I may not be able to get into this one. It's been so long since I've had to log into this one. There we go. Okay, I'm not going to say the password. Okay, so if we log into that project that I'm accessing, my Alpengrove project, if I come into view, document control, I can see all of the sheets. They're all in draft, but I always see the latest issue or the latest revision. So in this case, I can see revision number 1, revision number 2, but I can't go back to a prior revision. I always see the most updated revision. So I have the ability as an internal person to come in at any time. If I was logged in as an external person, which I don't think I have a login for an external person, I might have to check that. Then I would be able to only see anything that's issued. Now, if I access document control as an external person at this point, I would still see the listing of all of the names of the sheets, and I would see what revision it was on, and I would see that it was in draft, but this whole column here would be empty. I wouldn't be able to see or download any of those PDFs or DWFs or anything that's in here. So I don't have the ability to access anything that has not been issued. So your external people don't see things that you're kind of still have in progress or that you're still working on. But internal people, by all means, if you were working from home and you didn't have VPN or you're working from a hotel, as long as you have a way to know how to get to the login screen for Info Exchange and you have web access, then you would still be able to see all of the latest and greatest revisions for anything in document control. You wouldn't have to be on your network to do that. And the bonus here is if it's a PDF, I can simply open it in the Newforma web viewer. So I would be able to see it here. I could even do a markup. I could zoom in. I could, drag this around and take a look at, maybe there's something with the stairwell that's wrong. I could create a markup. I could even save it or even flatten it into a PDF. But if it's a PDF, I can go ahead and open that in the web viewer.
Laurie, I have one question.
Sure.
When you were linking the latest revision with the previous revision, you overwrote the file. How do we see the previous revision, even though you're not making a copy in the new format?
It's not overwriting the file. It's just referencing both of the revisions here. So when I did the drag and drop on top, I was just making it revision number 2 for this one. I wasn't overwriting that original file. That original file is still exactly where it was. It's still exactly in this location. And I can see the first revision, and these two are totally different files, I think. So this one should be a good example. So this is that first revision. And then when I did the drag and drop to make that 221 sheet, the new revision for A208, then this is the second revision. So it's not overwriting it. They totally stay in the same location that they were in. It's just updating it to make that the most recent revision, but both of them still exist in their respective folders. And they're both still referenced here as revisions for that particular sheet. And then it just makes it the most recent revision. It doesn't overwrite it at all.
So if a file is overwritten in the server, would you still be able to see the previous revision? I doubt it, right?
So if let's say revision number 1 was updated in the folder, as long as the name of this location, so like this says Alpengrove-A208 PDF, if an updated PDF was placed in that location and overwrote that file, but it was the same path and the same name, it would update it here because we're just pointing to it. We're not saving a copy of it. So that's why I'm saying if somebody updates it, modifies it, if it truly is in that same location and the same name in that same folder and it's referenced here, it will update that particular file, but it will still be revision number 1 with the revision date that I had. It would just now, if I were to preview it down here at the bottom, it would look different.
So we're probably not going to work with this that much. We're going to start working with, so Lori, we typically issue for review, and then that's going to be revision A, B, C, D, whatever it is. But then we create folders, so it would be issued for review at a certain date, and that's what we would be linking here. So we would be linking to our network, to the drawings that are issued or approved. So we're not going to be linking to the working file. We're going to be linking to approved folders.
Right. So you could also handle that through the document sets if you wanted to keep a reference of it. If those, like once you issue it, are you moving it or no? Like once you have those sheets.
So what we have is we have a working folder, and that's where the most recent copies of the drawings are kept.
Right.
And then once we issue, we move to approved folder, and that's where documents are stored, documents that are issued.
In that case, we will not be knowing which drawings are in draft stage, like you're progressing on that drawing. We'll find a way.
Yes, but we are not using the drawings in a draft stage. Those are just our working drawings, so we won't be issuing them.
But if they're working drawings, wouldn't you could have them referenced because they could just be in draft state, and then when you go to issue, you could issue through document control because that would mark them as issued. But then you're saying you move them after that point. Is that what you're saying? You move them when you issue them?
We move them as a record copy, so we know it's like a snapshot, so we know what we have issued.
Right, but when
so that's okay. I think
but just to show you, when you do that through document control, let's say that I was ready to issue, let's say I'm going to issue all of my structural drawings, just as an example. And I have all of those highlighted here. Actually, let's do it in architectural because there are a lot more sheets in here, and some are on revision 2 and some are on revision 1. Let's just take it down through there. So when I issue these and I say issue selected record documents, I could say latest revision or select revision. Normally it would be the latest and greatest. But when I do this, it's going to issue it through Info Exchange. And as part of that issuance through Info Exchange, you'll notice here it automatically saves a record copy in your folder structure on your network. So you wouldn't have to move them because you could always go back and look at that record copy at any time. So you could still keep them in all the folders that your working folder, and then as you issue them, if you ever needed to go back. So if I say, let's say that I issue this, I'm going to issue this to myself just because that way I can show you the email. But let's say that this was a issuance number 1, who knows? And I'm going to issue it through Info Exchange. And I'm going to say, or we'll say, what do you guys usually call your issue when you issue it? What do you call it?
Issue for construction. Issue
for construction. Okay, and we could also add in when we went through the admin training, how we were talking about the keyword list. Remember, we were talking about how you can change what's in the dropdown. You can change what's in this dropdown. So if you wanted to say this was issue for construction was the purpose, you could just have the subject as, whatever you want, and then the purpose could be issue for construction, but we'll leave it here as for construction. And we're going to issue it through Info Exchange. We're going to say create and transfer because it's a regular Info Exchange transfer. Say okay. And when it does this, it does create the record copy, which is that snapshot in time that you're talking about. And it does save it on your folder structure because we saw where that went. But the easier way to see it in new forma is you actually have an activity center. I got to find it here because, like I said, not my normal training environment, but I have one here for record copies. And at any time, I can come into the record copies activity center. Here's the one that we just did. And here's all the files. And I could select them in Internet Explorer. I could extract them. I could open them in the viewer, but I don't have to move them at all because as part of that issuance, it automatically created the record copy. So it went ahead and created that snapshot in time that you're talking about when you move it and then you issue it and then so that you have that snapshot of exactly what you issued. Here, I can just go ahead and see all the sheets that were there. And if I say select in Explorer, it's going to open it in Internet Explorer. But here's my folder for my project: communication, record copy, record documents. And here are all of the sheets that I issued, all of them. So they're already contained in this. It's by year, month, day, and then the name of the transfer that I did for the issuance, whatever I called it. And then it's got that snapshot in time of all of those files. But it truly is in my folder structure, right? It's when we set up the project, that's where we determine where this record copy goes. So when we're looking at it from an administrator perspective, when we're in the edit project settings, when that project is created, then we have, let's make this a little bit bigger. There we go. So first off, in the project folders, this is where we determine where all the record copies go. So it depends on which setting that you have here. Remember, we talked about this for the transmittals, the record copies, etc. This is how it knows where to go. And in my case, it has a project item type subfolder. So it goes under the record copies, and then it had one for, I think, record documents or document control. I think it's record documents. But I would have one for R5s, submittals, any of those kinds of things that have record copies or transmittals. That's how it knows where to put it, but it's still in my folder structure for my project. So it's already kind of doing part of that work for you. It's creating that snapshot in time, and it's putting it in a subfolder for you already. And then here in the Activity Center setup, under the document control, this is where we determine what starting number the revision starts at, whether it's alphabetical or numeric, and then all of the keyword lists that are available here. So that's that document control purpose. That would be the purpose drop-down list that you might want to change to say issue for construction. But it's going to kind of do what you're doing now, but you're not going to have to do it. It's just going to go ahead and create that subfolder, make the record copy, place it there. But the original file still, that working copy still stays where it was. And then as you add those revisions, you would be able to put them in document control and then just issue from there. So it's already doing part of what you do now.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's very similar to our process. We just going to make some customization and that's it. I think it's going to work.
Good. Yeah. So, and like I said, we're recording this, so you can always go back and review it as well. The other thing that I do want to point out is if you ever want to put things in a subgroup, then you can just say, create record document package. So if I wanted to create that subset of documents, I could, like for my mechanical, and it doesn't have to be by discipline. It could really be any way that you want, but that way I could just pull in all of my mechanical sheets. And it's not, again, it's not copying them. Let me remove that one. It's not copying them. It's just referencing them in this package, and it will just put it right here so that if you ever wanted to, while you're, kind of working on things, you could always come in and just look at, okay, well, what sheets are in the mechanical package, or are they issued, and how many, how many revisions do we have of each of these sheets? But you only have to do the add revisions from files here, and it will automatically add that new revision to the sheet in the all record documents. And then if that sheet is also referenced in a package, it would update the revision there. So these packages don't stay static. They do update as you add revisions if those sheets are referenced in that package. But the benefit is here is that if you ever needed to issue specific sheets to specific people, and like I said, it doesn't have to be by discipline, you could just go ahead and create the package ahead of time. And let's say that we knew that every time that we were going to issue mechanical or what have you, it was going to go to specific people. Let's say it's going to go to, we'll just choose that whole group. It was going to go to this group of people. Then when we have this package and we're ready to issue, we would just say issue selected package, either latest, record document, revision, or select. These are all on revision number 1, so it won't matter. But it's going to be a similar pop-up, but the benefit is that my distribution list is already filled out. Then the subject is the name of the package. I could still choose from the drop-down here for construction, and notice it stays a sticky setting. It remembers what I chose last time, but it's got all of those sheets, and it's going to create that record document package. So it's going to create that record copy. So that way it's already set. It's good to go. And I can just say create and transfer. I could have added in additional notes or what have you, but I don't have to, right? So if you know kind of in advance that you are going to need to issue certain sets of drawings to specific people at different points in the project, you could kind of set that up in advance as a package and then just issue the package. That way you don't have to go through and weed through, you know, a couple hundred sheets to figure out which ones go to which person. And just like before, the record copy will be here. So here's my mechanical sheets. Here's all the files. And if I say select and explore, it's just going to be in another folder under the record copy, record documents. And I can see here's the first one we did. Here's the mechanical sheets that we did. And here's the exact copy of what we sent. So it's, like I said, it's kind of already doing that process for you. The one thing I do want to point out that I forgot to mention while we were in the project settings is you'll want to make sure if you want those record copies automatically created. I think it's defaulted to be required, but just double check on your settings here on the Info Exchange tab that the record document issuances for record copies says required. That way it automatically creates the record copy when you do that record document issuance. Otherwise, it'll send it, but it won't create a snapshot in time. So you'll just want to make sure that that is checked. Okay, so we've done a couple of issuances. We've seen all of the sheets, how we add them, how we add the revisions. The reports that are available, you have two types of reports. The standard create report is a log report. So it is what you see is what you get. So whatever is in this table, whatever columns, whatever line items, in whatever order, if I run the standard log report, that's truly what it is. And I think I did mine in HTML, but it's just those same columns in that same order. It's not anything super exciting. The document register report is the one that is going to show you what has been issued to whom and when and how. So if I click on that one, and let's run that one in Excel, just to show you. I think I have Excel installed on here. Yep, good. It will put in a column for each time any issuance has been done from document control for this project, and it will show you which revision of which file was issued in that issuance. Remember, I had my package and then I had the other ones, but down at the bottom, it's going to show you who it was issued to, and it gives you a key. So you know when, who, and how. These were done through Info Exchange, but that way you can kind of see what revisions I'm issuing to which person and what date. So at any time you can run this report, and every time something is issued from document control or as part of a contract management item, which, like I said, when we get to the contract management piece, we'll be going through that again. It would also add another column if you're issuing as part of like a send and close or respond and close. But it will just add another column with the date, what revision of what sheet was issued to whom and when. So you do have a nice way of seeing that without having to go through every single Info Exchange transfer to try to figure out which was which was a record document issuance versus a regular Info Exchange transfer. But that way, this is kind of more of a, an updated listing of all of those sheets. And at any time, you can see, if I click the plus sign, I can see what's been issued, what hasn't on an individual level. And then even with that one highlighted, I can see the issue history down here as well. And the one thing I do want to point out here is if you wanted to see the difference between sheets, if I wanted to compare this one to this one, I could simply highlight it, right click on it, or go up under the task and say compare to another file or another version of this file. And it will allow me to choose a file. It'll tell me if it's changed, if it's smaller, larger, if the date changed, etc. And then I can compare with the new Forma viewer. And because it's a PDF, I can compare with the viewer. And if I log in, so if I open that up, it's going to allow me to compare the baseline to the revised. So let's get that. Come on. There we go. So here I can see my baseline and my revised. It probably hasn't changed much, a little bit. So I can see some tags were added into here. And if I look at it on a digital light table, it makes it even easier to see. So here I can see the before and the after, and it'll tell me what's been added in revision, removed in revision, or not changed. And you can even zoom into part of the drawing if you only wanted to look at a certain piece to see what changed. I could, pull that over here. Let's go ahead. And I could even look at it in the digital light table that way as well. So we'll pull that up in the digital light table. And so here I can see those minor things that were removed in revision and then added. And if you've never done it before, you can even create an animated comparison. So if you needed to send it to someone to show them visually what's changed, you could create an animated comparison that you could then save and send to someone. So if I say comparison, I probably would put in the sheet and all that good stuff, but we'll just leave it as is.
That's pretty good.
Yes.
I do have a question, Lori. So let's say after a couple of days, we issue drawing again with the transmittal and everything. Would that report include all subsequent revisions, and it will create sort of a master drawing list of everything that we have issued with the latest revisions?
So are you looking to create like a combined PDF, or you?
No, so I'm saying, so we issued certain documents at a certain date, and now they're issued.
Okay.
And let's say next day we do another revision for one or two documents.
Right.
And we again send with the transmittal, so it will be issued one more time. Just
right.
Revision will go, well, one revision up. So that report that you created.
Yep.
Okay, the first question, how the client or whoever, the user on the web exchange, how would they see those changes? Because we're going to have two revisions of the same file.
Right. So they always see the latest revision. They never see an earlier revision, even if that earlier revision was issued. So if they're here and they come into document control, they would see issued, and they would see whatever the latest revision was that has been issued, and they would see the issue date. So let's say that we added a third revision on a couple of these and we issued those. And it doesn't matter who we issue them to, as long as the state is issued. When that external person goes into Info Exchange, let's say for the first two sheets, it's now at the issued is revision number 3. They would see revision number 3 for these two, and then for all the rest, they would still see whatever the latest issued revision number 2 or revision number 1, whatever it happens to be. So they always see the latest and greatest issued revision, even if it was not issued to them. But if it's still in, like, let's say that you add revision number 3 and it's still in draft, they would still only see issued revision number 2 because revision number 3 has not been issued yet. But if you've issued it, they see the latest and greatest, even if it wasn't issued to them. So it's real time to them. Whenever they log in, it's the latest and greatest issued revision.
And is there a way under record documents to create some sort of folders and subfolders? Like in the view, not in a client, but on the Info Exchange.
Right, that would be the packages. That would be the packages, and they could just click on packages, and they would see the packages here. So any packages that had been created, they could just click into the package. But if you had them all, in subgroups, they would see them all in those subgroups, and then if they've been issued, then they could download them.
Okay, but packages will be updated automatically as well when we send subsequent revisions.
Yep.
Laurie, I have one more question regarding Info Exchange rights. So if we do not want all to see all, is there a way to restrict folders in there? We'll be issuing, let's say we issue to multiple parties under one project. We don't want to overwhelm the other end user with the numerous number of drawings, or maybe even for the security reasons. Can we restrict that?
So the closest you could get is, let me go back here to the administration. Because like I said, it's usually external people for document control. They just see the latest and greatest issued. It doesn't even have to be issued to them. It's just a state of issued. They're not going to get an email notification if they're not listed as a recipient. But if they are here, let's say if we can modify this one. So the document control is show all. And I think the only other option is show none. Yeah. So really the only options they really have are they see the latest and greatest issued, or they don't see document control at all. So there is no option on that one. But again,
Okay.
they're only going to get notifications on the ones that they're included on the issuance. So they'd have to actually log in and go looking for it to know that it's there. It's not going to bombard them with an email unless when you do the issuance from document control, you include them as a recipient, then they would get the email notification. But otherwise, they don't get an email notification. They would actually have to log in and go to the view document control. So they'd have to say view document control and come here to look for it. Otherwise, they don't, unless they're on the recipient list of the issuance, they are not even going to know that it's there.
Okay, that's good.
Yep, because the only other thing that I could do is at the project level, I could hide the activity center, but that would defeat the purpose because then nobody would see it on document control. They would never see it on Info Exchange. So here you'd have to hide, I believe the record documents are somewhere in here.
Well, in the worst case, we can always create like a dummy projects. We can create if we don't want them to see for some reason, we can create let's say just a mechanical scope project and just link
Right.
those two.
Right, because this is at the project level. So if I hide the record documents here, then no one would be able to see it on Info Exchange. So I'd have to do it through the permission set. And then if you don't want them to see the record documents at all, then you would just create a new permission set that hides the document control. And then when you add that person to the project team, you would just need to, when you get that pop-up that says, do they have access? And you say yes. So you usually check the box here to allow web access. The default would be external user. You would just choose whatever new permission set you create, because you can create more. You could create one that has no access to document control. And then that way you would just choose that other permission set here and apply it to just that person for this project. And then that way when they log in, they don't even have access to document control. But I can't pick and choose that they only see some and not others. This would be per person, per project. That might work though. I mean, you could do that. But that way the people who need to see document control can see it, and the people that you don't want them to see document control, they wouldn't even see the ability to choose the view document control from the drop down. It just wouldn't be there.
Okay.
Does that help, Nadia?
It does. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay.
Yeah.
So we've got the sheets, we've got the issuance, we've got the packages, we've seen Info Exchange. I'm going to pop back over to my PowerPoint. Let's see here. So first, if you're going to use the Plans app to use with document control, you need to just download it from the iTunes store. So it will look like this one. It will have the little push pin up here for the new form of plans. And then you would log in, or if you don't already have, if you already have a new form ID, you would log in. Otherwise, you would say create new form ID. And that way you would set it up. You just use your name and your email address, and it will have you set up. It'll send you an email to set up your password, but then you can find your company. So you would just type in J&E, and then that way it would link you to your company and have you log into Info Exchange to verify that you have access to Info Exchange. You only have to do this setup part once. but then it would load all of the projects that you have access to on InfoExchange. So it would load them all, whether or not they have record documents. So even if you don't have anything in document control, you would still be able to see all the projects that you have web access to. And then you would just tap on your project and it would give you a list of all of the sheets that are in document control. Now remember, because you're internal, you would always be able to see the latest and greatest revision, whether it is issued or not. And it will show a little blue arrow that has a download link. And what you do is while you're connected to Wi-Fi, you just tap on it and it will download that sheet. And once it downloads it, the little blue arrow will be gone. But if you are opening the app later and you're connected to Wi-Fi, and let's say someone had added a new revision, then the download arrow will be orange. And that just means that the sheet that you have downloaded on your device is not the most recent revision. So that visually just lets you know that you're working off of an old revision, and to download the most recent revision. It's not going to force you to do it, but it will visually indicate. What you'll also see down here at the bottom is that it will tell you how many sheets are available to download, how much space it's going to take up on your server. And you can choose to download all of them if you need all of them. But the individual download buttons are good if you only, like if you're only going to walk through a certain floor in a building, you might only want to download the sheets that pertain to that floor. You don't need all of them, for example. But you could go ahead and just download those. And you can also, under the display, I don't think I have a screenshot for it, but you can choose to display, instead of display all, like it says over here on the left, when you click the button, you have the ability to choose to only display certain packages. So to more easily, scroll down or drill down to just that one package of documents versus having to go through all of them. And then when you tap on the sheet, it will actually show you a little thumbnail of it over on the right. And you'll notice it'll tell you which revision, the revision date. If anything had been previously located on the sheet, it will also show you that there are located items, or if anyone had done a markup. And if you wanted to remove that downloaded revision off of your device, you could. And then to open the sheet, you just tap on it. And then just like we saw when we were looking at the new Forma web viewer, I can, just like with anything else with an iPad, I can zoom, I can move it around with my finger, and kind of zoom in or out and see the sheet on the fly. I can also mark it up. So I have markup tools up here at the top. And I think if we go back here, you'll see the markup plan is in the upper right-hand corner. If I tap on that, that's when it opens my markup tools up here at the top, and I can mark this up, save it, and then this upload button underneath the done in the upper right-hand corner, that allows me to send it via email to someone. If I have email installed on the device, it will actually open it in an email with it attached, and then I can just email that markup to someone. But unlike when we do a markup through InfoExchange or in New Forma, how it automatically links back to the original file and it becomes a related item, if I do the markup through the Plans app, it does not do that. It's simply just kind of on the fly that I'm going to mark this up and send it to somebody. It's not going to link it as a related item in New Forma.
Lori,
yep.
I do have a quick question. I think this one, I think we can talk with our people that are on site, and that would be very useful.
Okay.
But for us, just to complete this document control, if you can just briefly show us how to log incoming documents, because we're going to have thousands of drawings coming from, I guess, InfoExchange, where for example, equipment vendors will be uploading their documents.
So if they send it through InfoExchange, what you would do is you would receive it as an incoming transfer. I don't know if I have any in here that are, do I have any files in here that are still available? Maybe. So what I would do is I would receive it as an incoming transfer, and I would extract it because I can't really, like if I record the transfer as something else, it's not going to really, mine are old, so it's not going to allow it. So let's see if I can get one in here. I could extract it into a project folder. I could record the transfer as something else. So if I were going to say, let's see if this one's going to work. I doubt it. It's from 2012. It probably won't work. No, it failed. I could try to record it, but that's usually when we're recording it as an incoming RFI or submittal. If I can get to, let's see if I can get to something here to show you. Let's see if I can get to Outlook. Because basically it works the same as the Outlook add-in. So here, if we were going to, here's that issuance that we just did. If we say file as, it's very similar to the record transfer as. If I choose my project, you notice here that it's not like I can record it as things like action items and contract management items that have workflow or even daily reports and things, but I'm not recording it as record documents. So what I would tend to do is I would, if it's and I'm just using an email in this example, it would actually show here is I would say receive pending file transfer, and I would extract it into whatever project folder I want to. And then I would go to document control and I would say add revisions from files to log it into document control. I can't log it into document control from here. I can only extract it because if I were to record this transfer as something else, it's really that same list that I had when I was in Outlook. I can record it as an incoming RFI or submittal or change order or action item or things like that, but I can't record it as incoming record documents. So I would extract it first to extract them and place them in the folder. And then I would go into document control and I would say add revisions from files.
So basically that would be, I think that would be the process. So we go and we log into a project folder, and then we're gonna go to document control, and then we add those documents as just a regular documents, I guess.
Yeah, you would just say add record documents. Yeah. Add revisions from
and
files.
how we gonna be checking the revisions? So let's say they send an, so it's pretty much similar process. Let's say they send another transmittal with updates. And then we have the same file with the number of revisions. Would the system recognize that it's the same number?
If it has the name is the same, then it will try to link it as best as possible. So if I am here, and let's say I did that same extract and I extracted it into the folder, then I would come here and I would say add revisions from files. I would browse to the files wherever I had placed those on my network. So let's say I have these three. And if I say open, it's going to link any that it can as a new revision. So it's going to try to link the name to, and it says number here, but it's really name, the name of the file. And if the name is close enough, it usually looks at like anything that's separate from itself, so like the A101 is where it's going to look, and it will try to link it as best as possible. And like I said before, if it was off or something, like maybe this was supposed to be 201 instead of 102, I could just drag it and drop it on top of here and just make it the new revision for A201. But if it is a brand new sheet, I would just say create.
So basically we have to tell them don't change the file names. Just use the same file name throughout the life cycle.
Yep.
And then we log regularly like we would.
And then it should link it if the name is the same. It should link it automatically.
Okay.
So here, let me just create that one and then just say add. And then here you'll see my A101, the most recent revision, which is revision number 3, is in draft, but we can see we issued revision number 2. And they all have, different locations of where those files are. It's not overwriting them. They're still in their own separate folders. It's just one place to come in and easily see for this sheet, how many revisions have we done and which ones have been issued, and then to issue from here.
Laurie, for incoming documents, since they would not be issued, they would be received.
Yeah.
Would we be able to create?
I left them in as draft. I didn't issue them.
Okay, but it doesn't say that it's an incoming document. It just says it's a draft, right?
Right, but when I did the add revisions from files, when I say add files, remember I could always put in a revision description. So like if I'm adding these,
the column.
Yeah.
and I could just say I only want to see the ones that were changed, and I could just highlight them all, and I could put in a revision description down here at the bottom.
Yeah.
So I could say
it's the same way as our documents, just we say who created the file, so it could be either us or OEM or whoever.
Yeah, you could just put in whoever created the file. You could put that in the description. That would be fine. Because that way here, when you look at all of the different revisions, you would see whatever you put in as that revision description. So you could have that person's initials or name or what have you, and then you would see it here as which revision was created by whom. Mm-hmm.
And I assume that if we want other users to see the same documents on Info Exchange, we would have to kind of reissue these documents that we just received.
Yeah, you would have to issue those if they were external people. Yes, you would have to issue.
Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that way everything will be on Info Exchange, like our drawings plus all equipment vendor or whoever is sub-vendors, whoever is submitting the documents.
Right, it would be the latest and greatest. Whatever you highlight and you issue, that's what they would see. They would always see the latest and greatest ones.
I think we got the sense of this.
Yeah, so I think we'll table the app until we do the on-site, and then I'll make sure to bring my iPad, and we can do that with your folks that are out in the field, and go through that with them. And that way we have some hands-on available to them.
I think we're going to create some sort of a test project just to see how this works.
Of course.
And probably, I believe we do have one test, we're going to have you on site or something. So probably we're going to talk about this document management the most.
Oh, sure. That's no problem. So and I don't think we've set the date for the on-site yet, just so that you guys know, I'm booked until the end of October. So if you have a date in mind, then you might want to let me know so that we can get it on the calendar. We can always move it if we need to, but that way, if you have a date in mind or a week in mind, I can let you know what my availability is so that we can get that scheduled.
No problem. I think we need to start using this before we can ask right questions and make the best use of your time. Yeah, and that's going to take us a couple of weeks at least.
Oh, yeah, no worries. I just wanted to give you a time frame just to let you know that things are booking out pretty far in advance. And then I know with the holidays sometimes coming, it makes it difficult as well with people being out of the office. So no, that's fine. And like I said, we'll go through that in more detail. And then plus, as you start to use it, I know those questions will come up, so feel free to send those my way. And then, of course, when we talk about contract management, the actual processing of contract management, so not so much with the workflow consultation, but when we start doing like RFIs and submittals and change orders and things like that, we will circle back to this because we can do the issuance as part of the closing action on an RFI or submittal or even change order or contract. Anything that you want to include sheets from document control as part of it and have it issued as part of it, then by all means, we'll come back and circle back to this at that point as well.
Sounds great.
Okay. Any other questions?
We are good for now, I guess.
Okay. Well, I will package this up to you. I don't know if I'll get to you before I get to the airport today, so it might be later today or tomorrow morning that I send it to you. And then I think we have a training tomorrow morning as well.